Okay, I wanted to talk to you about VPNs, right? We had a good intro, but then it got boring real quick. Virtual private networks is what that stands for, okay? And subscription-based service is how you usually get it, okay? You can pay with PayPal or you can pay with Bitcoin. If you pay with Bitcoin, you don't have to worry about, it makes it a little bit harder for them to track your name to, the service providing. You don't really need to worry about that stuff, though, because really the reason why you should be getting it right now is just so that way you can keep your foot in as many doors as possible in terms of getting around location-based content filtering, okay? People used to use it to get around Netflix. I used to use it in Canada so I could watch USA Netflix because USA Netflix has always had better content than Canada, okay? So that's historically we've used it for when it came to consumer use. But with you guys in the US, I heard that TikTok's going to get pulled potentially. And so, it would be wise for you guys, so you're not a victim of propaganda, to keep your foot in as many doors as possible in terms of sources for authentic news from abroad. Okay. And you never know how your payment situation is going to change, between now and tomorrow or 3 months from now. So that's why if you have an opportunity to, pay outright for it for a few months, it's probably a wise thing to do. Also be aware when you're looking at a provider where they're based out of, what country they're based out of. If you guys are trying to get around, restrictions in the US, you don't want to get a VPN provider who's established in the US. You're going to want to pick one, maybe it's located in the Cook Islands, for example, or abroad, somewhere in Europe, for example, okay? And don't automatically assume either, just because you're using a VPN that enhances your security, because all you're doing is instead of channeling it through the broadband provider or the internet provider you're with, and to wherever it goes to the remote location, you're now bypassing, well, you're still relying on that infrastructure, but you're tunneling through a third party, okay? And that third party, they can potentially data harvest. They can find out which websites you go to, but ultimately you're relying at the end of the day on the encryption being provided in terms of your it's doing so well. Lost the word I was looking for. Anyways, HTTPS is where the encryption really is maintained, okay? And that as long as you see that S on the end of HTTP, you're okay. If you're doing your banking, for example, you're not going to want to channel that through a third party because that could potentially open you up to a vulnerability, called a man-in-the-middle attack, okay? But if you're at a cafe and you're having to do your banking, well, if you've got the option of using a VPN, then it may be beneficial, right? Because it's better than connecting to the bank on an open Wi-Fi network, right? At the cafe. So it's all about just kind of assessing and evaluating risk, I suppose. But really, at the end of the day, security is really about obscurification, adopting that principle as much as you can. That's like having your eggs here, there, and everywhere, okay? Being spread out a little bit more, because it's like, nothing's 100%. So the more spread out you are, the better, because it's about not being low-hanging fruit, I suppose, isn't it? If somebody were to do a sweep, for example, you being a little bit more of a pain in the ass to harvest from than your neighbor, that provides you some security, I suppose, right? It's about being a pain in the ass at the end of the day, isn't it? Anyways, hope that helps. Some names that come to mind, by the way, if you need them, ExpressVPN, ProtonVPN, iVPN, OVPN, WireGuard, StrongVPN. I haven't used all of these. So just do your research. Make sure you're aware of where they're primarily based out of. You want that abroad, and look at some reviews, and that's pretty much it. I mean, we're only using this here at the end of the day just so that way you can kind of get around any firewalls or filtering. To to fight propaganda, right? So anyways, that's enough for now. Talk to you later. Have a great day.